Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Questions, Quarrels, and Quandary by Tonya Kappes, narrated by Johanna Parker. Chapter 1. The first rays of dawn were just giving the sky a good morning kiss when I pushed myself out of the cozy confines of my camper van. The world was still quiet, the birds just clearing their throats for the morning chorus. Now, a lady doesn't often get up with the chickens, but that day had a special kind of promise to it, the kind that whistled through the pines and waltzed with the honeysuckle perfume in the air at Happy Trails Campground. You see, my friend Dottie Swaggart, the manager of Happy Trails, had a fancy for yard sales that would put a starved coonhound on a ham hock to shame. And in this part of Normal, Kentucky, located deep in the Daniel Boone National Forest, where kudzu draped over everything that held still long enough, we cherished yard sales like a preacher did his Bible. In this town, every old bit and bob wasn't just an artifact. It was a cipher of tales whispered in hushed reverence. As Dottie liked to say, "These ain't just knickknacks, sugar. They're whole lives, stories in brass and porcelain, just waiting to be dusted off." The two of us had seen more sunrises over a cup of Trails coffee special blend than a rooster on an insomniac's farm, always eager for the Saturday edition of the Normal Gazette's special yard sale section. After all, the early bird got the choicest pickings, and Dottie wasn't one to lose out on a juicy find. Dottie had a knack for it, I'll tell you. The way she would stroll through those laid-out wares, you would think she was at a debutante ball instead of trawling through dusty, forgotten treasures. And it wasn't just the thrill of a bargain that got her heart ticking. It was the stories, the hidden narratives behind every tarnished silver locket and faded family photograph that set her eyes alight. We found ourselves sipping our warm brews, our attention focused on one advertisement in particular. "Benson Estate Sale. Starts at dawn. Early birds get the worms," Dottie hummed. Beneath the awning of my vintage camper van, Dottie and I sat at my picnic table. "Look at us," Dottie snickered. "We're perched like two hens on a fence." She fanned her cigaretted hand in front of her face. "It's gonna be a hot one. It's only 6 a.m., and the air is already as thick as molasses." "Lots of picnics sitting this week." I clicked my tongue and looked out onto the lake located smack dab in the center of Happy Trails Campground. I lifted my mug to my lips and took in all the empty camper lots that would soon be filled by a group of traveling women, camper cowgirls. From what I'd learned about them, they were a nationwide camping organization for women only, whose ages spanned several decades, and who came together as a group that loved to camp. "Come on, Fifi," I called to my toy poodle, who had gone on her own sniff walk. My picnic table was strewn with the detritus of our summer Saturday morning routine. Coffee mugs still steaming with the dregs of brew, and the Normal Gazette laid out before us like a map to treasure. Dottie, the spectacle of our morning ritual, sat in her faded housecoat, her head a constellation of pink sponge curlers. Between her fingers, a cigarette smoldered, the smoke spiraling upward around the loose tendrils of hair escaping from her curlers. She took a thoughtful drag on her cigarette, the tip blazing bright against the morning's soft glow. The exhaled smoke curled up and away, mingling with the humid Kentucky air. With her other hand, she gently unrolled one curler, setting loose a ringlet. "Woo-wee!" she cackled. "My hair is as bouncy and lively as a square dance today." Her gaze, sharp as a barber's razor, was fixed on the newspaper, scanning the yard sale section with a focus that would put a cat on a mouse hole to shame. I swear, she could spot a promising sale from a mile away, just by the look of the ad in the Gazette. "Looky here," she squealed in delight. "Curb alert at Etta Hardgrove's." "Curb alert?" I asked, watching Dottie in awe. It was an art, really, the way she balanced that cigarette, the curler removal, and her fierce concentration on the newspaper. "Oh, yeah, curb alerts are gold for free things, and Etta has the best items for free." The cherry of her cigarette glowed in concert with the fiery trail of her freshly released curls, the newspaper rustling like dried leaves as she folded it in half and stuck it up underneath her armpit. "I guess we're going," I said. I knew Dottie was serious about the curb alert when she snuffed out her half-smoked cigarette. It's the only time she would leave a smoke without giving it a proper send-off. "Well, I reckon you didn't hear me. I said," And she pronounced her next words using her lips in dramatic fashion. Curb alert! The mere mention of it sets my heart fluttering like a hummingbird in a flower patch. I told you Etta has got some real good stuff, and we've got to go before anyone else beats us to the punch. What about the Bensons? I asked. They were the oldest, wealthiest folks in town. They'd made so many donations to the Daniel Boone National Forest that my office in the National Park Building, where I was on the park committee, was named after the Bensons. Their collection is sure to have some intriguing pieces, and it's closer than where Etta Hardgrove lives. I don't care. You said you'd go with me today, and today is the day. I've been waiting for Etta to have another one. She clicked her tongue and clapped her hands to get Fifi's attention. Let's get a treat, she hollered, getting Fifi to run at full speed back to the camper. We have to be back by noon. The camping cowgirls are supposed to be here to check in for the week, and Bets will be here with the church van to take everyone to a late lunch at the normal diner. I reminded Dottie of the large group reservations she'd made and all the plans she'd agreed to without asking me, even though I was the one who would be making sure they were all accommodated. Time to shake a leg and skedaddle, Dottie said, even putting Fifi in the camper van and returning with my keys. That curb alert ain't gonna plunder itself. The anticipation was thick as good gravy on biscuits. Dottie jumped into my little car, housecoat and all, and we set off, armed with pocketbooks and sturdy shopping bags. Dottie was a lady on a mission, little guessing that amongst those dusty relics, we were about to unearth a mystery that would turn our cozy campground life on its ear. But hey, that was life in normal, where nothing was normal. Chapter 2. Dottie couldn't stop smiling. Every once in a while, she'd take a look in the rearview mirror as she rode a shotgun in my Ford, her eyes swooping up to the car roof. Dottie had found an old lawn chair she just couldn't resist from Etta's curb alert. Like an old trophy, it was strapped to the top of my little four-door, the chair's fabric fading and worn, but full of character, just like Dottie herself. She was so proud of it that she couldn't stop talking about how good it was going to look outside her camper. Well, butter my biscuits and call me a roll, will ya? Dottie exclaimed as we turned into the entrance of Happy Trails and drove up the gravel road leading to the campground. I couldn't help but smile. If there was one thing that tickled Dottie more than a good deal, it was the sight of vintage campers. It has been a few years now, but when I first moved to Happy Trails Campground as the owner, I knew it would make a wonderful resort and retreat, not just for people who owned a camper, but also for folks who wanted the experience of a camper without owning one. That's how I came up with the idea of redoing a lot of little vintage campers and renting them out, so they held a soft spot in Dottie's heart and mine. Lining both sides of the gravel road, at least 10 vintage campers stood proudly, each one as unique as its owner, and they were 10 minutes early. The camping cowgirl group, known for its vintage camper parade, was nothing if not punctual. Ain't they a sight for sore eyes? Dottie said, her eyes twinkling as she gazed at the procession. Some campers were polished to a shine and painted in vibrant hues, like the turquoise one with pink flamingos on the side that was my personal favorite. Others bore their age proudly, their original paint jobs chipped and faded, but no less beautiful. They're a work of art, every single one of them, I agreed, my gaze lingering on a camper done up in a retro Coca-Cola theme, complete with a red and white color scheme and vintage bottle decals. Land sakes alive, May! Dottie suddenly exclaimed, pointing a painted fingernail at a small green camper with original wooden panels. Look at that little pea-pod! Ain't she a hoot? The sight of these nostalgic tin cans on wheels, each with its own unique story to tell, made a familiar warmth spread through my chest. This was my home, the place I'd chosen. Eccentric neighbors, charming campers, and all the southern charm a girl could ask for. The sun was shining, and my campground was coming to life with the colorful hustle and bustle of the camping cowgirl group. As I unbuckled my seatbelt, I couldn't help but think that this was going to be one heck of a day. I was greeted by a woman hanging out of her truck as soon as I parked the car and got out. "We are early," she said. "We would have pulled up to our campsites, but we didn't know which one was which." "No problem. Let me get the paperwork." I smiled and glanced back at my car, where Dottie was busying herself with the straps to retrieve her prized possession, the lawn chair, from the roof of the car. "Dottie, leave it!" I called and waved her over to come help me. Part of Dottie's job as the manager and mine as the owner was to check guests in and out. Most of our check-ins were on Sunday, but this week was special and everything started today. It was the annual 127 yard sale, the longest yard sale in the States, running from Michigan to Alabama through 6 states and cutting right through Normal. The actual event was only 4 days, but that was for the registered vendors and main shops and didn't include all the folks in houses dotting the roads through the small towns who set their own items out to make a buck or two. Why not? It was a no-brainer to use the big bucks spent in advertising for the 690-mile event when you lived along the route. Many times during the year, I'd hear from locals how they were waiting for the annual sale to put out things they no longer needed. "Looks like you already started picking," one of the camping cowgirls pointed to my car when Dottie walked over. "Oh, yeah." Dottie tucked her thumbs in the pocket of her housecoat and rocked back on the worn heels of her flip-flops. "That there was free, as in F-R-E-E. She spelled out the word as though it was worth gold. "We haven't come across anything for free," another camping cowgirl chimed in as she hung out the window of her SUV, a little bubble airstream hooked behind. "Have y'all been traveling a long way?" I asked the one who seemed like the head of the group as she came inside the office with me. "We came from Ohio, not too far. We like to head through Kentucky and try to make it through Tennessee, but these mountains get us every time," she snorted. "Charlotte Taylor," she introduced herself. "I'm the informal leader of this group. How fun." I had so many questions, but I'd let them get settled and use the lure of the campfire tonight to find out all their personal information. Over the years, I'd learned more about my fellow campers around fires than anywhere else. Stories were shared, laughter became contagious, and more often than not, life's wisdom was exchanged alongside the flicker of flames and the comfort of shared silence. Under the star-speckled blanket of the night sky, with the gentle crackle of a campfire as a soundtrack, guarded expressions will soften and people can truly open up. I retrieved the folder with their paperwork and opened it to go over with her. "If you want to look over your reservation and make sure the next of kin is filled out," even though she had put all 10 camping reservations on one credit card, I still had to have the information. I gestured for Charlotte to sit at one of the chairs in front of my desk. I walked around the desk and sat in my chair. "Please let me know if anyone has pets. We have these to put in your camper window in case of an emergency." I pulled out a couple of the animal signs I had my guests put in their windows, for if they weren't in their camper when there was a fire, or if something happened to the guests themselves, so emergency workers would know there was a pet inside. "Bee has a cat." She took one of the cat signs. "I'll be sure to give it to her. She's the one with the trailer inspired by Coca-Cola." I noticed it right off. My eyes glowed as I wondered what I needed to do to get a tour of the inside. Bee is the free spirit of the group. She was an artist by profession, a talent that is clearly reflected in her camper. Charlotte laughed while talking of her friend. "That mop of curly hair is always a different color, every trip we take. She decided to go with lavender this time. She and Dottie will get along just fine." I nodded out the window where Dottie was already making fast friends with Bee. Bee and Dottie were laughing. Bee had a radiant smile, and you could tell she had a zest for life by her array of vibrant, mismatched clothes and chunky jewelry. Bee was as colorful and captivating as the art she created with her travel trailer. "Is that a 1960 Shasta Compact?" I asked about Bee's trailer. "Oh, yeah, she loves that darn thing. And Coke." Charlotte got up and handed me the closed file. "Everything looks to be in order." "Great, let me get you a copy." I took it and moved to the printer. "Don't worry about it right now. I'll be here a few days, so you can just give it to me later." She turned toward the door. "I think the gals are a bit antsy to set up and get ready for our lunch at the normal diner. They are excited to go to a few antiques shops around here." "Sounds good." I followed her to the door and reached around to open it for her. "I'll see y'all back here. My friend Bets is going to bring her church van so we can all go together." "That sounds perfect." Charlotte led the way out of the office. "Nice to meet you, Charlotte." I handed her a brochure that included the guest rules and a map of the campground. "Charlie," she corrected me. "My mom calls me Charlotte, and she's been long dead." She waved her arms at the chuck wagon of camping cowgirls to follow her as the lead car through the campground, where they all found their camping spots one after the other. "This is going to be a lively bunch." Dottie rubbed her hands together. "We are going to have some fun, ain't we?" "I think we sure are," I said, and waved at each trailer driving past the office. Dottie and I watched the orchestrated chaos from our vantage point at the recreational outdoor area, sipping some sweet iced tea she'd retrieved from her camper. The camping cowgirls unhitched their vintage trailers with practiced ease. They connected to the full hookup the campground offered, making sure water, electric, and sewage lines were securely attached. All around us, the tranquil beauty of the national park, soaring trees, blooming wildflowers, and the gentle chirping of birds added a serene backdrop to the unfolding scene.
"You gotta hand it to these gals, May. They know their way round a trailer hitch better than most men I've seen,"
Dottie observed, a note of approval in her voice. "I reckon you're right, Dottie," I agreed, admiring their efficiency and camaraderie. Our attention then drifted to Henry Bryant, the maintenance employee of Happy Trails, and Beck Greer, the enthusiastic young teenager who spent his summers working at the campground. Under the unforgiving sun, their faces were flushed with excitement as they put finishing touches on their surprise for the camping cowgirls. They'd transformed our usual laid-back tiki hut into a celebration of cowgirl spirit. There were brightly colored bandanas tied to the rafters, fluttering gently in the breeze. Strings of fairy lights, each covered with tiny cowboy boot and hat motifs, were strung up around the hut and along the pathways, promising a beautiful spectacle once the sun set. Picnic tables were covered in red and white checkered tablecloths, lending a rustic charm to the setup. In one corner of the area, a large wooden sign, hand-painted by Beck, proudly declared, "Welcome, camping cowgirls," and was adorned with a detailed drawing of a cowgirl astride a horse, against a background of towering mountains and wide-open plains. Hay bales, each topped with a plush blanket and plump cushion, were strategically placed around the fire pits, providing additional seating and adding to the overall theme. "Would you look at that, Dottie? Those boys have really outdone themselves," I said, marveling at their creativity and effort.
"Well, as sure as eggs is eggs. They've done a fine job, haven't they?"
Dottie agreed, her voice filled with admiration. Underneath the clear blue sky, amid the splendor of the national park, it was a perfect day at the Happy Trails campground. As the camping cowgirls got settled, the air filled with anticipation and laughter. Gravel spitting up underneath some tires joined the sounds of the ladies chattering. I turned around to see who was coming and smiled when I saw the Normal Baptist church van with Bets Hager in the driver's seat. Bets threw her hand up in a big wave before she pulled in next to my car to park. When she got out of the van, I couldn't help but smile when I noticed her glow. It had been a long time since I'd seen her look that way. Bets was one of those people who was all things to everyone but herself. Not only had she been married to a preacher, which came with its own set of challenges, but then he had committed an unthinkable crime that had sent him to jail, leaving her heartbroken and feeling that her marriage was a sham. She took her role as a preacher's wife very seriously, and she had ingrained her entire self into the community to make it perfect for the church's congregation as well. As if that wasn't enough, she also had to endure her ex-husband succumbing to an illness, leaving her with the tasks of having to forgive him and take on his final do-gooder list to complete deeds he'd left behind. Through it all, Bets did find a new relationship with a local man, Ryan Rivera, and I couldn't help but wonder if the huge smile on her face wasn't due to him. "You look adorable." I had to compliment her since the last few months she'd been wearing baggy clothes, not fixing her hair, or even taking care of herself at all. That day, her green off-the-shoulder peasant top was tucked in the front of a pair of white shorts. She'd even styled her brown, chin-length hair into loose waves. Blunt bangs hung above her sparkling brown eyes.
"Well, bless my buttered biscuits!"
Dottie's southern twang spilled out as soon as she noticed what I noticed. Only I didn't make a big deal out of it like Dottie did.
"You're looking so good, you could charm the pants off a picky old coon hound. Did that makeover of yours have something to do with that handsome fella Ryan?"
Dottie continued to look Bets up and down. "Maybe." Bet sighed and pretended to flutter her eyes. "We actually finished all of Lester's do-gooder list, and ever since then, I've been able to sleep all night, which has made me get clearer-headed." "Does this mean you and Ryan are an official couple?" I asked, patting my hands over my unruly curls. The humidity in the air was starting to dampen my hair, which left it a springy mess. "Yes?" Bets bounced up and down on her toes. "It's so silly. I feel like a teenager in love again." "Don't you dare say silly," I told her and gave her a hug. That's the best feeling in the world. I remember when I first started to date Hank, I felt the same way. And then I asked myself, why on earth would I diminish how I feel about him and how happy he makes me?
I knew it the moment you laid eyes on that boy,
Dottie said, referring to Hank. She'd been right there since day one, as in the day I drove the camper van into Happy Trails and parked right next to the small dock. The memory played in my head like it was yesterday. Much like today, the sun was shining, the humidity had my hair all up in a curly mess, and I'd not showered for 2 days. I was standing on the dock overlooking the murky lake with a layer of moss all over the surface, wondering how on earth I was going to make the place sellable so I could go back to my pampered life in New York City, when Hank's big black car came barreling up the campground road. He jumped out, and from that first moment we met, his piercing green eyes made my heart go pitter-patter. Even when he accused me of harboring my ex who'd broken out of prison and threatened to arrest me, there was something deep down in me that was still attracted to him. That was the look I remembered, and it sure did feel like the look on Bets's face right then. She was snookered.
Lord, he must be sweeter than a jar of homemade apple pie to make you shine like a freshly polished pickup truck.
Dottie made Bets laugh more and bat her lashes even faster.
Keep fluttering them eyelashes, honey, and you'll have him wrapped around your little finger tighter than a snake in a knot.
Oh, Dottie, I could carry on with you for days. Bets literally couldn't stop smiling. He does make me happy. Her eyes drifted past me and Dottie. Speaking of happy, those little campers are adorable. Those are the Campin' Cowgirls, the group you're taking to town. I glanced over to the very dock that had given way the day I first laid eyes on Hank. Some of the Campin' Cowgirls were standing there and chatting away.
May, you go get them, and I'm going to show Bets my new chair.
Dottie curled her hand into Bets's elbow, dragging her away to my car. She wasn't fooling me, Annie. Dottie was using Bets to help her carry it over to Dottie's camper. As I walked down the campground toward my camper van to get Fifi, pride washed over me. The midday sun had turned the Daniel Boone National Forest into a picture straight out of a beautiful, nostalgic painting, giving it the best possible backdrop for Happy Trails, one I was hoping these ladies would remember. I glanced across the shimmering body of water. The Camping Cowgirls' vintage campers looked like little nuggets of the past, splashed with color and brimming with stories. A warmth spread through me from knowing I was providing a home for those campers as their adventurous owners explored the longest yard sale along the 127. I reached my camper van, a familiar presence nestled amongst the towering trees. "All right, girl," I said to Fifi, who was already standing at the screen door. "You want to go bye-bye?" Her little tail wiggled so fast that her legs danced with anticipation. She loved going for rides. "Let's show these ladies what normal has to offer," I said, and took a step into the camper van to make sure Fifi was looking her finest. "What about the mini camper's shirt?" I plucked one of Fifi's many little outfits from the basket right inside the door near the passenger's captain's seat, which I kept turned around for guests. With one good whip of the wrist, the shirt snapped into form. Fifi's nails ticked along the vinyl flooring as the excitement coursed through her tiny, furry body. I sat on the floor to let her scurry up to me. She loved looking so fancy. She was born and bred to be a prestigious show dog, but Ethel Biddle's old dog and Fifi had had other plans. They did have the cutest set of puppies, but I learned my lesson. If Fifi was going to be a campground dog and run around, she had to be fixed, and that marked the end of her pedigreed dog career. With Fifi in tow and her leash in my hand, I headed back to the meeting point, taking one last look at the serene lake reflecting the myriad colors of the vintage campers. It was peaceful. Bets and Dottie had started to round up the Camping Cowgirls to board the church bus so we could get on with our tour of downtown Normal. Dottie swaggered, her cigarette smoke spiraling up in the warm air, was adding humor to the group, chatting them up one by one as they got on the bus. I had no idea what she was saying, but I was sure it was hilarious by the way they were laughing in response. Dottie clicked her tongue when she saw Fifi. Fifi took off toward her. Even the fur babies loved Dottie. I headed to the storage units just beyond Dottie's camper and right across from the office where the bus was parked to talk to Henry. I found him in the one unit we used for all the seasonal things we had to store. The other units were rented by seasonal campers. We only allowed 10 camping sites to be leased by seasonal campers, Some of them stayed yearly, while others just rented them for a season, left their campers, and came on various weekends during their rental to get away from life for a while. The only yearly tenants we had were Henry, Dottie, me, and Ty Randall. But Ty and Ellis, Hank's sister, along with Ty's dad and young siblings, were about to embark on a new journey, owning a house. I snickered at the thought and considered how far I'd come from when I thought living in a camper was the most ridiculous thing I'd ever heard of. "Henry, we're about to leave," I said when I walked into the storage unit where he and Beck appeared to be rearranging boxes. "I don't think anyone else is checking in until tomorrow, but do you mind keeping an eye on the place?"
"Now, you know I don't mind," Henry grumbled, a soft note of resignation in his voice. "Beck here can finish off stacking the boxes."
I glanced around and pointed to the stack in the front that had wedding written on them in black marker. My mind curled back to all the things I'd been collecting over the past year for my upcoming wedding to Hank. Mary Elizabeth, my foster adoptive mama, had insisted I have a proper Southern wedding in a real wedding venue, not a campground. So she seemed to have been satisfied when I'd agreed to have the reception at the old train station motel, where there was a barn repurposed for such things. "Don't be messing with those," I teased when I left the two alone to head back to the church bus. We were about to embark on what I hoped would be a memorable day, filled with antique shops and fun stories. As I stepped up on the bus and rounded the corner to join the others, a sudden chill raced down my spine. It seemed out of place, jarring in the otherwise calm day. Dottie patted the seat next to her.
"What's with that look?"
Dottie asked over the sound of Bets closing the bus door and the chatter of the ladies sitting behind us. I looked past Dottie, out the window at the forest, the lake, and the sun-soaked campers across the campground. Nothing looked out of sorts, but the stillness was almost ominous. "Nothing," I responded and shook my head, a sense of unease creeping over me, an unsettling inkling that something was about to go wrong, just when everything was going so right. Chapter 3. As we drove through the verdant canopy of the Daniel Boone National Forest toward downtown Normal, Dottie Swaggart was putting on a real show for the camping cowgirls. I mean, she was laying it on so thick that I was excited, even though I'd been there a million times.
"Now, ladies,"
she said, her southern accent wrapping around each word like a warm, familiar blanket.
"We got some real treasures here in Normal. Y'all ain't gonna believe your eyes."
She gestured animatedly with a hand laden by an unlit cigarette as she launched into her enthusiastic description.
"First up, we got Dieter's Feedin' Seed, run by our very own Alvin Dieters. Now, don't let the name fool you. He's got the most unique collection of camping items this side of the Mississippi. Makes you feel like you're stepping into an adventure every time you walk through them doors."
A chorus of oohs and ahs greeted Dottie's words. I watched from my seat, feeling a swell of pride for our little town.
"Now, when we get to the Tough Nickel thrift shop, y'all are gonna be like kids in a candy store. The saying goes, one man's junk is another man's treasure, right? Well, darlings, it ain't never been truer than it is at the Tough Nickel. You can find everything from vintage cowboy boots to old-timey cookware. And who knows what other treasures are waiting for you."
Her eyes sparkled with a kind of excitement that was contagious.
"And between y'all and me," she added, her voice dropping conspiratorially, "the heart of our town ain't just the shops. See that grassy median separating the one-way streets? It's like our own little oasis right in the middle of downtown. Shady picnic tables, perfect for a summer lunch. And that amphitheater, well, it's seen more laughter and joy than you could shake a stick at."
As the church bus pulled into downtown, a large, colorful sign came into view. It read, "Welcome Camping Cowgirls," and it made the ladies in the bus cheer. It felt like home, like community. And as that odd chill from before tried to creep back up my spine, I shrugged it off and exited the bus with the others. We were in for a good day, I was certain. At least, I hoped.
"Look at the smiles on all their faces,"
Gert Hobson said as she stood in the front window of her store, Trail's Coffee Shop. She held a steaming hot cup of coffee in one hand while the other was situated on her hip. Fifi had wandered over to the dog bowl.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?